That sounds good. Hey, I want to welcome everyone to the Recruiting Continuity, how to successfully interview anyone, anywhere using video. I know you've got busy schedules and take a little bit of time out during all the things that are happening. We appreciate you sharing. My goal today is to share some practical steps that you can take to ensure that your business continuity continues and your hiring doesn't freeze during these unusual times. I'm your host, Cody Horton. I'm the Managing Director for Diverse Recruiting Experts. I've been in recruiting for a couple of decades. One of the great things that I've been doing the last 10 years is working on video and virtual interviewing and really trying to help employers change the way we do recruiting.
Cody, could you share your screen, please?
Oh, okay. I guess that would be helpful. How's that, Jeff?
Yep, there you go.
Great. Given the times that we're in now with all the crisis happening, I thought it would be great to share this quote with you from Helen Keller. Although the world is full of suffering, it's also full of overcoming it. And that in itself says a lot for where we are. We've got some crazy times currently. I want to let you know some of the things we're going to cover today during this process are going to be, I'm going to talk to you about who should use video interviews, the benefits of virtual interviews, adapting your process to video interviews, and being able to help your candidates get better at video interviews. But before I go into that, I really wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're going through right now. This is an opportunity for us as recruiting leaders and hiring managers to really take some of the challenges that we have with travel restrictions and social distancing and change the way we do our talent assessment process. I've been working with video and virtual interviews for a long time, and this requirement today, the requirement of not traveling and not getting face-to-face is an opportunity for us to really improve what we do with our talent outreach efforts. Now, one of the things that you're probably seeing is your leaders they're humans too, so they don't really want to make decisions. Some of your leaders may actually be freezing and not moving forward with things that you think are critical or are critical for your talent programs and your talent efforts. As leaders and as trusted advisors, we're in a great position to help those leaders do what they do best, and that's lead. And sometimes we just have to give them a push and show them some other options that may be available to help them move forward. Social distancing doesn't mean social isolation or that you can quit socializing. I was talking to a friend of mine, Ann Grady, who did a webinar yesterday on resilience. That webinar was really focused on getting people to take a step back and look at what's important in your life and what things really matter. She talked about things like, hey, take this time and reach out to people that you may have been thinking about, but you haven't reached out to them in a while. Now is a great opportunity to use some of the technology that we have with video to reach out to those people, continue to build those relationships, just check in. And we're in a better position now than we've ever been in the history of mankind to stay connected and continue to communicate with each other using video. And so starting with that, I just wanted to kind of take a moment and just share and just go, we're going to get through this too. We're going to help you keep your process moving forward, and we're going to be in a position to come out of this better than we were before. So I want to share some use cases for video that you may not have thought about. I've done some of these in some of the companies that I've worked for, and they had a major impact on our recruiting effort. Some of the cases that you might use, I was at a company and we built these soundproof video interview booths, and we took them to career fairs. Now today, you're not going to a career fair, but you can get really creative with some of the video processes and approaches that you're taking, and you don't have to stay in the box. Putting video in career fairs. Most universities have a computer with video cameras that you could use. Just make that connection, especially if you're in a college recruiting world, make the connection with those organizations and show your commitment to using video to interview their students so that you can get those early in career people moving forward. You can also use video for mock interviews. So these mock interviews could be used for the candidates. They could be used for your interview teams. They could be used internally and externally. The beauty is you have an option of recording that and then sharing feedback on that mock interview. Hosting virtual interview days, that is another way to have a powerful tool to interview lots of candidates over a period of time that will allow you to then make hiring decisions, or at least get past the steps that you're in if you were doing phone screens or you had your hiring on pause for the moment. One of the things that we use video for is we do hiring manager intakes. As a recruiter, typically you're taking notes and then you're sharing the notes with your team. If you've got sourcers who are doing work for you, a lot of times the sourcer has to depend on what you share, but you can use video, especially if your team is geographically distributed now and virtual. Record what the hiring manager says so that your teams can then hear exactly what was said and not what the recruiter had to interpret. It's also an opportunity for hiring managers to actually share more information with the interview team about the roles that they're looking to hire for, and they can give them exactly what they're looking for, and everyone on the interview team would be on the same page from hearing directly from the hiring manager. And I mentioned this is a great opportunity for you just to stay connected with other people. So before I talk about technology, Jeff, I wanted to just check to see if there anybody had any questions.
Not at this point, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat, then I will call them out to Cody.
Sounds great. So one of the places I wanted to start is just terminology. If you've been working in this industry for any period of time, you've probably heard all this terminology, but if you're new to this industry, especially if you're new to video interviewing and virtual interviewing, here's some of the terms you might hear. You may hear the term virtual interview. That gets used interchangeably between video. I want to expand on it a little bit. A virtual interview is just a remote interview that could be done with video. It could be done with an online assessment. It could be done through email. It's just a virtual, it's remote. It doesn't necessarily have to be video. It's more powerful and rich if you're using video, but that's one of the terms you may hear. You might also hear video interview, and that's primarily video. The video interviews are typically done on a platform that was specifically designed for interviews, or it may be done through one of the tools that's common, Skype or Zoom or Hangouts or FaceTime. There are a number of video options for the individual as well as the business that allow you to do a video interview. It's right at our fingertips. There are two major types of video interviews. There's the one-way recorded interview where a candidate is presented a question. The question may be in video form and the question may be in a written form, and the candidate answers the question and then the answer is reviewed later by a hiring team or an interviewer. That's also called an asynchronous interview, and that is normally recorded and reviewed later. There's also the two-way interview. Some are recorded and some aren't recorded. So you may hear terms like green interview because there's no travel required, and there's this concept that you've reduced the greenhouse emission and the impact on the economy by having a green interview. You might hear digital interview. That is just an electronic means of conducting an interview. It could be live or it could be recorded. It could be chat, it could be video, it could be email. So I just wanted to level set. So you may hear me use video and virtual interview interchangeably. So why use video interviews? You'll hear these. You can go on the internet and get most of these reasons. Reduce costs, save time, handle scheduling conflicts, have a consistent interview, and I'll talk a little bit more about that with some of the platforms. Candidate reach, improve how far you can reach a candidate. With video, you can really get to a candidate regardless of the geography. You can reach them anywhere on the planet. So here's a long list of some of the benefits. I'm not going to read this list to you, but the biggest benefit here is to keep your recruiting process moving forward when there is a crisis, a travel restriction, or something like social distancing, which we're dealing with now. You are going to save money. You are going to save time. One of the most powerful things that you can get with video is you've got a richer candidate and a richer employer experience. And that allows you to tell a better story, both as the employer and as the candidate. It also gives you a chance to create consistency and standardize the questions and the candidate experience once you implement this into your process. This also allows you to, you're only going to bring on site the right candidates for the right role because you've already had a chance to do more than just a phone screen and talk to a candidate. You've had a chance to interact with them over video, over chat. You could use whiteboard functionality with some of the tools that are out there. And so this gives you a chance to bring the right people on site, therefore reducing the number of people that you've got to have travel and come to your site. So there are pros and cons to virtual and video interviews. I've tried to narrow this down because there's a list of things that you will see as pros and cons. The top two pros, in my opinion, and a lot of other people have different opinions. One, it's less expensive when you are recruiting because of all the other costs that are associated with bringing someone on site for recruiting. You also save time and really handle that scheduling issue between the interviewer, the candidate, the hiring manager. Probably the two biggest cons, in my opinion, are the bandwidth and connectivity issues. Not everyone has access to high-speed internet. They may not know how to do the connections. They may be new to it. They may be technology averse. Those are things that can be overcome with instruction and coaching and training. And then probably the biggest one is you may not be able to build rapport with your candidate. So if you're on a one-way video recorded, you're not building rapport with that candidate. They're not building rapport with you because you can't see the full body and all the body language that goes with that. The other is not everybody's great at remote communication. And so there's practice that can happen, but you can get much better at these. But those are two of the biggest things that you would want to consider. So let's talk about some of the tips for employers with video interviews. One of the first things you want to do is decide what kind of video interview you're going to do. Are you going to do the one-way virtual interview that gets recorded and then gets reviewed later? There's some platforms that specialize in that. One of the challenges with the one-way virtual interview, one, is the candidate is having to speak into a camera. It's just like doing this webinar. I can't see feedback or interaction with the group and makes it very difficult to have that conversation. One way to coach candidates through that is to let them know, hey, look, just imagine someone else is on the other side of this camera who is going to review your interview, and they're going to hear your answers. This is your opportunity to give them a richer understanding of who you are and what you're about and why you want to work for their company. And so that kind of coaching is necessary for the one-way virtual recorded interview if you do that. The other thing to keep in mind when you're doing that one-way recorded interview is if you do a lot of these, your hiring manager or your interviewer who reviews those interviews might get tired and get fatigued because there's no interaction and they've got the same challenges that the candidate has. There's no interaction, so they can't see body language, they can't see anything, they can just hear the answer, see the answer. And so you want to coach and you want to space the number of interviews that you're having someone review. And so that's the big thing on the one-way interview. So just things to think about as you're thinking about doing that recorded interview. The other is the live two-way interview where you've got a candidate, you've got an interviewer, they're on the camera, they see each other, they interact, you record that, then your interview teams can review that interview and they get they get two benefits. They get to see the candidate and how they respond, but they also get a chance to see the interviewer and what kind of questions the interviewer asks, and be able to just think about, hey, that question didn't seem to match what we're looking for, or we're looking for a lot of nice to haves. It just gives the reviewer more context to what's happening. And then you've got a live, not recorded. It's just a live interaction as if you were on the phone, only you've got a richer experience because you're using the video. And then there's a live panel interview that you could do. You could record this or not record it, but you've got a candidate. It's a one-to-many engagement where you've got a candidate and then you've got a panel of interviewers who are interacting with that candidate. And so once you decide what type of interview you're going to do, you want to be able to make sure you adapt it to your process. And by adapting it to your process, I always say, start with the end in mind. Define the goals that you're trying to accomplish. Are you looking to make a hiring decision based on this interview? Or are you just trying to narrow down the pool of on-site candidates? Depending on how long you have to wait before you can get people face-to-face, may drive and may inform what your goals are. The other thing is you want to find a way and build into this process a way to showcase your brand. Make sure you're highlighting what makes you unique and why would a candidate want to work for you. You also want to be able to show employees in your workplace doing real work. You can do that with video. You can share that video either during the interview or ahead of time. I would recommend ahead of time so that the candidate gets a better feel for what your company is about. And you want to be able to create that richer experience and that richer interaction. One of the things that happens on a video interview is people think, oh, it's a video interview. Just treat this video interview like it's a conversation, as if you were face-to-face with the candidate, and just build that communication. This happens all the time on social media where people are building relationships without ever getting to know, without ever knowing or meeting the person in face-to-face. Then the other thing that you really have to think about is there are going to be issues with technology. Be a little bit more forgiving with candidates about the technology issues they may have. You want to prepare for them and be ready to solve through them, but don't blame the candidate because they may have gone through all the steps to prep for that interview and technology just happened. The other thing is nerves. Candidates get nervous on a face-to-face interview, and they definitely get nervous when they're doing video interviews. I'm in the front of the camera all the time doing Zoom meetings, and for me, it's a daily occurrence, and I'm just used to it. And sometimes our team forgets we're on camera, but when it's your first time and you don't do it regularly, there's a good chance you're going to be pretty nervous. The other thing you want to do is, as the employer, make sure you're investing in the bandwidth that you need and the equipment that you need to conduct a great video interview. Make sure that you're creating a video, you're creating a process where you can actually let the candidate know what they should expect. So if it's a one-way candidate interview that's recorded, you want to be able to talk to that candidate ahead of time and let them know, hey, it's going to be a little bit weird. You're going to be talking to a camera. There's not going to be any feedback or reaction from anyone, but just know on the other side of this camera, someone is going to review this. And so put your best foot forward, relax, and have fun with this interview. And then the last thing is you just want to practice. Make sure that you're practicing, you're testing all the time, and you're just doing things that allow you to get better at being in front of the camera. So here's some other things that you want to consider in the process. These are just examples. You would write your own process. You would build this out in a way that would work for you and your recruiting workflow. Some of the make sure you're contacting the candidate and letting them know, hey, we are interested in doing a video interview with you. You're going to tell them what kind of video interview it's going to be and make sure that you send them instructions on setting up for the video interview. You also want to prepare your interviewers because some may have never done a video interview and you just want to prepare them and get them comfortable. So you take all the weirdness, or at least as much of the weirdness, out of the process as you possibly can. Then you want to conduct the interview. If you're recording the interview, get the recording, get that interview shared with the people that need to see it. Take notes. If you're taking those notes, get those notes together so that the rest of the team can see that. This is about increasing the transparency and visibility to how decisions get made with your interview teams. And during the debrief, you want to be able to either share a video, share those notes, and discuss what happened during the interview, and then just update the team on what the decisions were once a final decision is made, and then update the candidate on next steps. I know that's recruiting 101 stuff, but I wanted to make sure I called it out here because video interviews should be additive to your process, not a distraction. So how do you prepare your interviews? I'll talk about this a little bit. I discussed this a little bit in a previous webinar, but I want to make sure that as it applies to video interviewing, getting comfortable will make this better for your company. But be respectful, which should go without saying, but you want to be thoughtful about it because it's not that face-to-face personal connection. And so being respectful and taking a few extra steps to show that respect for your candidate, for their time, thanking them for being part of your video process is critical. And just treat it like it's an in-person video, an in-person interview. Make sure your interviewers are reviewing the job descriptions. A lot of times what I've seen in the past is the job description doesn't get reviewed prior to the interview. And then the hiring manager or the interviewer is trying to take the time to look at the job description while they're trying to interview the candidate, and they may not know what the job is because sometimes things are moving quickly. Someone might have gotten thrown onto an interview at the last minute. Just make sure they review that job description and understand what you're looking for. Making sure that your interviewers read the candidate's resume and they understand a little bit about the background so that they can prepare good questions for the candidate. If you've got standard interview questions, how does the candidate match the things that you're looking for in that job description? And making sure you minimize distractions as the interviewer. Bullpen environment's probably not the best place to conduct your virtual interview or your video interview. Find a good place where you're going to be minimizing distractions. You're not multitasking. You're not trying to do email while you're in that interview because it will be much more noticeable to the candidate. So by doing that, by being conscious and thoughtful about minimizing distractions, it will make your interview much more successful. And then just manage schedules. And what I mean by that is if you are in a different time zone than your candidates, which is highly likely with this video interview because the candidate's not flying to be on site with you, just be thoughtful about what time of day the interview is scheduled for, because you don't want your candidate to have to interview in some dark 30 or some dark hour of the night or super early in the morning. So just be thoughtful about scheduling and those time zone considerations. And the biggest thing is make sure you have fun, make sure you breathe, and I always say make sure you drink enough water, but not too much water before your interview. So how do you improve your interviewer capability? One is to make sure that you've got experienced interviews. So you could use some of the tech things that I talked about earlier in the use case to better prepare your interviewers for video interviewers and give them a chance to practice. Use something like interviewer tips, general interviewer tips, the do's and don'ts of interviewing so that people remember things they can ask, things they can't ask. We certainly have information that we could share on the do's and don'ts of of interviewing. Showcase your diversity, use diverse interviewers. And one of the reasons you're trying to use diverse interviewers is you want to have people who are going to see something from a different lens than the other interviewers are seeing. This is going to give you the opportunity not only to showcase diversity. If you've got a diverse workforce and you're trying to hire diverse talent, they want to see people who are like them. The other thing is just the diversity of thought and the way people are going to hear information and process that information is going to be different. So during your debrief, you may find that interviewers coming from different points of view or different references saw something totally different during that interview. And I talk about this probably in every webinar, is you want to consider the must-haves and not the nice-to-haves. The must-haves are so critical to getting that job done that you want to make sure the interviewers are focused on the right things, and you want to prioritize for them what they need to be concentrating on during that interview versus the nice-to-haves that they would want the ideal candidate to have. And train your interviewers to probe candidates. If an interviewer if a candidate answers a question during your video interview that your interviewer didn't get the answer to, just probe the candidate and get your hiring teams, your interview teams much better at doing that, and you'll get a much richer candidate viewpoint. So hire for values and not culture fit. If you're hiring for the values and the attributes that you're looking for this job and for your company, and the things that your company thinks, the core values that your company thinks are critical and important, hire for that and assess for that and get your interviewers to know what those are, not necessarily a gut reaction, culture fit hire. Same thing in a face-to-face interview as it is in a personal interview. Hire for values, not for culture fit. So here are a few things that you want to tell your candidates on how to prepare. So I'll share this, and then at the end, I've got another one that you can send directly to your candidate, or you could spend some time talking with your candidate. Making sure that your candidates test their equipment is so critical and so key that you would think it's a no-brainer, but a lot of times candidates do not test the equipment because they just used it. It should be working. Make sure they're testing right before the interview. Doing the technology check. Is the internet working? Do I have the right bandwidth? Have I shut down all the browser windows that I need to shut down? Making sure that they're familiar with using the tool that you're going to need to use. If not, maybe they can get on with, if you have a recruiting coordinator or if they have a recruiter, they can get on with them prior to the interview and just test to make sure that they are familiar with how to navigate the tool. Cameras, make sure your camera is a quality camera. And now most computers have quality cameras, but an external camera would be great. Have the camera be as close to eye level as you could possibly get. Make sure the microphone is working. Make sure your speakers are working. Make sure you have good lighting. So the lighting may be in front, some lighting behind, not staring into the camera, but pointed up, and even lighting on the side. There's information out there around how to manage the camera. You don't have to be a studio or create a studio. You just want to make sure that you're not in a dark place where the interviewer can't really see you and they can't see your expressions. And just expect there to be issues. You want to prepare so that there are no issues, but when an issue comes up, just be in a position that you can move forward and you have a backup plan to move forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit, Jeff, I want to see if there are any questions before I talk specifically about some of the video interview platforms.
So Candy Anderson has a question about doing an online job fair. So I don't know if this is a good place to talk about doing online job fairs, or you want to save it to the end?
Yeah, online job fairs. So Candy, I'll get back to that question. I'm going to cover a few virtual career fair platforms that are out there that you could use for online job fairs. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit, Jeff.
That's all I've got for now.
Great. So I'm going to talk about 3 different platforms types that you could use to do your virtual interviews. One of the platform types is an actual video interview platform. This is a platform that was designed from the ground up to do video interviews. These platforms typically have pre-built questions. They've got AI, they've got scheduling components. They've got lots of customers at the enterprise level that are used. Their pricing models may vary. This is just a list of a few. In 2009, I started building a list of all the video interview companies out there and the pros and cons of each one. I'm not going to go to that level of detail with these, but I'm going to mention a few that are leaders in the industry now. HireVue has been around for a while. I first used HireVue in 2009. The product has improved significantly over the last few years, and they've got a team of people that are focused on the video and virtual interview experience. And so HireVue is one. InterviewStream is another, long-term, been around for a while. They've done some great work, and they've got an amazing platform. Modern Hire has brought together a few different platforms that used to exist. They've moved it into one platform. They've improved on what they already had. And so Modern Hire is another platform that's specifically designed for video interview. Sonru, the same thing. They've been around for a while. They've got a platform that works at the enterprise level. And then Spark Hire. Spark Hire is getting a lot of buzz now. They've got lots of customers. They've got a lot of reach. One of the things with Spark Hire and these other platforms as well is they integrate with your applicant tracking system. And so depending on what your company is looking to do and what your budget is, I definitely would recommend that you reach out to someone at HireVue or Spark Hire. And I'm happy to make any connections possibly that you would want to get connected to Sonru or Modern Hire or Interview Stream, and just get a demo and see what their pricing models are and see if that fits what you're looking to do. Especially if you go back to the first thing I said, is determine what your goals are and determine what kinds of interviews you're looking to do. And one of these platforms would be able to, from the ground up, support what you're trying to do, as well as having the customer success professionals that'll help you integrate it and implement it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about video conference tools. These are tools that most of us have access to something. These are tools that people are using to do video interviews. The product wasn't necessarily designed for that. It was more designed for communication. Some of it's group communication, some of it's one-on-one communication. But these are some of the more popular ones. And companies, most of these have a recording capability. They have chat. They have whiteboards, so they can create a rich experience for your candidates. And they are tools that you probably have at your fingertips. Most have a free version and a free download. Zoom is one that our company uses all the time. It's in the news. Lots of companies use it. Lots of our customers use it. Zoom is really powerful. This webinar is done using Zoom webinar. Blue Jeans is another tool that companies and individuals can use to do their interviews, to do their video interviews and record them. Fuse, probably less heard of, but that's another platform that I've used. I've used all these platforms and they all have their pros and cons. But these are a number of platforms that you could use. LiveSize, Cisco WebEx, GoToMeeting, Skype. You probably have Skype or Google Hangouts or FaceTime if you're on a Mac in your house, and you can use those as a tool to do video interviewing if you've got no budget or you're in a position where you just got to do something quickly and you haven't had a chance to evaluate. Microsoft Teams has the video capability. We have a fully integrated Office 365 suite, and we can use the video within Teams. So those are some of the tools that are used for conferencing that are being used for video interviews. And then you've got the video interview platforms. Any questions on that?
So Cody, I do have a new question here. What are your thoughts about a candidate that sends you a video highlighting their interest in a position?
Wow. You know, that's a pretty cool. I've seen this happen before, and I saw a candidate. Let me just give you an example. When I worked for another company a few years ago, a candidate who was a marketing candidate did an interview highlighting a company that they wanted to work for. And they highlighted all the things about that company and why they thought they were a match for that company's values and initiatives. That video went viral, and almost every, Fortune 500 recruiter who was recruiting marketing people called this candidate. I personally called the candidate myself because I wanted to hire them. And so that has a huge impact. It was innovative because it's been about 5 years since that happened. But it was innovative, it was creative, it got eyeballs on that candidate. And so I say all that just to say it's pretty impressive. Now with all the inundation from video, if it's unsolicited, it might be a little tricky, but that candidate posted it on YouTube and it went viral. So it can't hurt you to get really good at telling your story on video. Okay. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about these virtual career fairs. I personally used virtual career fairs um, for a company that I worked for. We did a number of virtual career fairs. So the virtual career fair can be set up. There are a couple of different ways. One may be where you've got a virtual career fair that has multiple companies attending. And so everything's virtual. It's like you're walking around an expo center with companies, and they have their booths. You have the ability to interact with people from that company. You have the ability to chat with them. You could go to a live interview with them when you walk up to the booth. So those virtual career fairs, that's a big one. And normally that's hosted by some organization where they have a virtual career fair. There's one for veterans that's coming up, or maybe it passed already. They've got some virtual career fairs for universities. Some of these specialize in universities, and you have a career day at the university rather than going in person. You're at that career fair, and it's all virtual. So this is here's just a list of a few of these, and I'm happy to send the web links to these. I haven't used virtual career fairs a lot, but the one that I did use, we were able to brand our company. Candidates were able to show up. The key is you have to promote these, and you have to get people engaged. And so the virtual career fairs, that is a place that you could really connect with lots of different companies if you're a candidate. If you're on the employer side, one of the things that you may want to do, if you're especially in a case where you want to start hosting a number of these, some of these virtual career fairs turn into just a company sponsored career event. And so instead of having a hiring day where you're presenting to candidates, your company sets up a virtual career fair, and the candidates attend your virtual career fair directly with no other employers there. So Brazen Virtual Career Fair, VFairs has a pretty good, a great product. Easy Virtual Fair is another one you look at, and Career Eco is another one that you would look at. And Career Eco is a lot of universities and academic educational institutions. The key here is just to think outside of the box. If you don't have the budget, use some of the other tools that are free, because there's lots of free stuff out there. But if you've got to make a case for going bigger, then go really big and think outside the box. So I talked about these candidate tips earlier. I'm not going to talk about all these. I'll send this to you. We will make these slides available for you to get. But this is specifically focused on that candidate and some of the things that you want to be able to share with the candidate, so that the candidate is actually totally prepared, or at least knows what to expect for your virtual interview. The success of your video interview is going to come from how prepared was the candidate and how prepared is your interviewer. And if you get both prepared, all the things that need to happen in the middle will happen, and they will happen with a better outcome than you could have imagined. So Jeff, I want to just stop there and see what questions people have.
Well, back to Candy's question about an online job fair to fill openings in their retail division.
Yeah, so for that online job fair, I would say go back. If you're doing an online job fair, one of these virtual interview platforms would allow you to do the online job fair, and it would allow you to invite candidates to that job fair, where you can host that as a company's job fair, and you can brand it, and you can make sure you put information out. You can have your hiring manager standing by to have conversations with those candidates via video or chat or whatever media, whatever channel you want to use. So these are a few that I would take a look at to do that online job fair. One of the other things you can do is, if you're not trying to brand it out as a job fair, and you're primarily trying to connect with people that you're going to source and invite, you could use some of these products. So for instance, Zoom allows you to create video rooms. You could literally invite candidates to the main Zoom room, do a big presentation on what that looks like, and then you could move people to different video rooms within Zoom, and you could have the hiring managers in those rooms having conversations, or you could set those individual Zoom rooms up as an interview channel. So you bring everybody into the main Zoom conference. You have the kind of the overview of what to expect, and then you have hiring managers in the other rooms that can take interviews, and you could just schedule them that way. I mean, you have to get creative on the scheduling or be diligent about the scheduling, but that's another way that you could simulate that online job fair. But these virtual career fairs is a place to start, at least to explore and figure out is that right for you, or are you trying to do something that's more of an interview day?
Cody, Zoom does also connect to Calendly, so that would help in the scheduling side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I have another question. What feedback do candidates have about doing video interviews?
Yeah, so over the last 10 years, the feedback has changed a little bit. When I first got involved doing video interviews, candidates didn't like the one-way video interview because they couldn't see any response from the interviewer, and so they didn't really like it as much. But once you prepared a candidate for that video interview and told them what to expect, they got much better at it. The other thing about that recorded interview is if you are interviewing somebody for a particular job and they're not a match for that job, but you think they might be a match for another job, you don't have to reschedule an interview. You just share that interview with the hiring team for the other job. So there's a lot of power in being able to share that interview with other hiring teams. And so current feedback with candidates, because now the people that are joining the workforce are on video all the time with all these other tools. And so they're much more open to being on video and sharing their video and putting their content out there. So the opinions have changed. Most people still prefer the live face-to-face interview because they feel that gives them a better shot. The two-way recorded interview, though, is really powerful. And I've had a candidate say, I love the fact that my interview can be shared with another team that might be hiring if I'm not a match for this role. So I've seen the feedback improve over the past 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Super. Well, I want to thank you for joining. I really appreciate you being here. If anyone is trying to make a business case for a video interview platform and justification, I've got a template that I'm happy to share with you on how to think about it and how to approach it with your leadership. So appreciate you joining us. Hope you all have a great day. Stay safe.